8:37 here, Big 550 KTRS. Here's Mr. David Stokes, who is with the Show Me Institute. He's the development director. And a little bit of policy thrown in on top for us. Good morning, David Stokes.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
Doing anything good for the 4th?
I'll be going to Knoxville to visit my in-laws. My wife and kids.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I like Knoxville.
Yeah, but his in-laws.
I like my in-laws. My wife and kids are already there, which is how I was actually able to play 72 holes of golf this weekend.
Yes.
Jeez.
And so when are you going down to Knoxville?
Wednesday night.
So you're going to be playing 92 holes between now and Wednesday night?
No, thankfully I'll be able to see my children again, so I will be with them.
Gotten it out of your system.
The cousins and the family there for the 4th.
Lots of talk of minimum wage. It looks like you, since you weren't in favor of the minimum wage, looks like you dodged a bullet. Looks like the city has tabled it, right?
It appears to be, and I hope that's the final outcomes. Some members of the committee, the Ways and Means Committee that were in charge of hearing the bill, have decided to, as you said, table it. I believe the acting chair of the committee, Alderman Vaccaro, said that this was exactly that they were rushing this legislation, and this was the type of legislation that shouldn't be rushed. And it was too big of a change.
They were rushing it because they wanted to get it in before a state law.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that a state law tightening, there's an argument here. Some people say there's already a restriction, but a new law tightening the restriction, limiting cities from increasing local minimum wages has been passed, may be signed by the governor. If not, would certainly be subject to veto override in the veto session.
Right.
So Alderman Vaccaro and some other members of the committee, who I think they just got very, very uncomfortable doing this on a rush basis, because it is such an enormous change. I would argue it would have been a devastatingly bad policy change for the city as well, but it's good to see a few people and step back and say, hey, whether or not we've got this looming deadline, it's still a bad idea to move this through on some emergency basis. Something that could be so harmful to the small businesses of the city, to the low-income workers of the city, who many of them would absolutely, at a $15 an hour change, would have lost their jobs very quickly.
Yeah, it's great to have $15 an hour if your job still survived.
Right. It's for a lot of the people, the minimum wage increase would have been a decrease to zero.
And I think the point you've made, we've made it here, but it's certain to be made enough. It's like the smoking law. If you ban smoking in the city and not in the county, people will start drinking it in the county, right? And so it's got to be if you ever want a minimum wage, it's got to be across the board, or you put those businesses at a competitive disadvantage. Therefore, they'll move to where they have a better opportunity to make money. So they'll just move to the county, which worsens the job situation in the city.
Absolutely, and I don't support increasing the national minimum wage. But that said, the strongest argument in favor of national minimum wage increases is that the money that people make, the higher income those workers make, it gets spent, it gets recycled in the economy quickly.
Right.
And there's legitimacy to that argument at the national level, and even to some extent at the state level. But at the local level, at the city level, that argument just breaks down completely. And this would have been a very negative change for the city of St. Louis. And thankfully, some members of the Board of Aldermen just realized that A, it was going to be harmful, B, even if they didn't know, they didn't want to rush it, so it's been tabled and stopped.
Yeah. David Stokes, it's been often said that you hate taxes, and yet you like the fact that this senior center is going to have to start paying taxes.
I like a broad tax base. I don't like high taxes, but one thing I like even less is high taxes for some and no taxes for others unless they truly deserve it. So we've had this battle for probably a decade now, maybe longer, in the St. Louis County Assessor's Office over retirement communities, which are for-profit businesses, but they'll oftentimes put together a small number of rooms in their retirement community for charity care, maybe just 5 to 10% of their total rooms, and then they'll go and seek tax abatement as a charity for the whole thing. So it's been really a battle. Nobody disputes that if you're putting 10% of your facilities aside for charity care, that 10% should be tax exempt as a charity. But we seem to be moving finally in the direction, and the Post-Dispatch has done some excellent stories on this, including one just last week, that finally some of these very, in some cases, almost luxury retirement communities are agreeing to be put back on the tax rolls. And the county assessor, Jake Zimmerman, deserves credit for fighting this battle, as do prior assessors. A broad tax base means lower taxes for everybody, and that's good tax policy.
One of the things I don't understand about property tax is that in this story, it's going to be based on 53% of the assessed value. So you get assessed on 82% of your value. I get assessed on 100% of my value. She gets assessed on 75%, and these guys get assessed on 53%. How wrong is that?
Well, it's very complicated, and I'd have to know exactly what leads to the 53% before I criticize it. We have
Right.
a policy study at showmeinstitute.org on how property taxes are done in Missouri that will explain a lot of this.
Right.
Property taxes, showmeinstitute.org. What means a commercial property is valued at $1 million. You assess commercial properties at 32%, meaning you tax it at $320,000.
Okay.
Your $100,000 home is assessed at 19% of value, meaning you pay taxes at $19,000 for the purposes of your tax bill.
Are you just making up those numbers? Or
No, those are the
okay.
official
No.
numbers.
Okay.
I
Right.
don't know either.
And right, I should have clarified that. I'm just making things up here. So the farmland is even lower than that, but that's particularly complicated.
I understand farmland
That-
because that's a different deal.
That 53% number, if that's incorporating that 15% is going to be exempt completely because it's charity care, then I would understand.
I see. So you'd like to see where that number comes from.
Before I criticize it, I'd have to see a very precise breakdown
Right.
of why it's at 53%. I presume it's taking into account that some of that property is going to be tax exempt justifiably
Right.
because they do some charity work.
But there's also wiggle room. Like we're not raising your taxes. We're just raising your assessed value, which in turn raises your taxes.
Well, right. And the law is that you're supposed to, as a community, as a government, roll back rates to offset that increase.
Right.
But if your taxes go up, if your assessment, goes up 15% one year, and the average for your neighborhood community is everybody goes up 10%, you're going to get hit by that 5% increase because they'll base any rollbacks based on the average. And if you're above average,
Right.
then you can get a wallop. And that's what appealing your assessments is for. And I hope that many of the St. Louis City, St. Louis County, St. Charles residents
Right.
who thought they were harmed by overly high assessment increases appealed that assessment. Which,
Yeah, but it's so convoluted. It's like I don't want my assessed value. So when you're trying to badmouth the value of your house when the tax man comes, but when the real estate guy comes, then you're trying to tell him how great your house is. So it seems to me like they force us to play this game. It just seems like a pretty antiquated way to deal with property taxes.
Well, if you're allowing me to dream,
Yes.
if you're going to say
Go
how
ahead.
do we change,
Go ahead, Congressman David Stokes. What do you want?
I'd prefer a system where we had more of the value based on the land, less on the buildings, and where basically all property, no difference between commercial, residential, and farmland. You just value the property for what it's worth at market value, and then whatever you choose to do with that land,
Right.
you pay a sort of a set rate.
I wouldn't be totally against talking about that, but you have to make special arrangements for farm because farm's different. You know, if you've got 70 acres and you're just holding on to it, or I'm not going to be able to pay the tax bill on that, so I need some type of relief from that farmland because I'm not doing anything with it.
Well, right now, the state of Missouri agrees with you. We have lower assessed values and taxes for farms.
Right.
However, the taxes people pay on farms in Missouri is, in fact, so unbelievably low that that is a problem. It is too low. We're talking, and we've got some information on this at showmeinstitute.org Fast Facts.
Right.
The amount of farmland, it's about 1%, maybe 2%. Homes pay taxes at 19%.
Right.
That's what it's supposed to be. it's supposed to be higher for farmland, but in reality, the underassessment of farmland, it works out that the taxes are so low that schools and road districts in rural Missouri have difficulty funding themselves. So this becomes a problem because you then take income and sales taxes from the St. Louis area and have to transfer it to rural schools. I mean, we do subsidize through low farm property taxes. We do subsidize a lot of rural Missouri, and that's a problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, ding, ding. School is in session. David Stokes is our professor. Show Me Institute Director of Development and, I say, PhD in Thinkology. David C. Stokes.
I like that.
When can we read you? When can we see you?
We got a lot of information up on property taxation and the minimum wage issue we discussed at the top at showmeinstitute.org.
How did you shoot in your 85 rounds of golf?
I shot terribly for the first 18.
Yes.
I shot well for the next 2.
Uh-huh.
And then on the 4th round Sunday afternoon, I think my body was pretty tired because I went back up to shooting poorly.
All right, fair enough. David, have a good 4th of July. Have a safe trip, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, McGraw. Thanks, Kelly.
8:50 here, Big 550,